Nurse Catherine Rodriguez quietly entered the Platinum VIP suite at Manhattan General Hospital, carrying medication for her most challenging patient. Real estate mogul Alexander Hartwell had been making unreasonable demands since his arrival, treating medical staff like personal servants. "About time you showed up," Alexander sneered from his luxury hospital bed, not bothering to look up from his phone. "I've been waiting 15 minutes for my pain medication. In my world, delays like that cost millions of dollars and get people fired immediately." Catherine maintained her professional composure as she approached with his prescribed treatment. "Mr. Hartwell, your medication is right on schedule. I'm here to ensure you receive the best possible care." Alexander's eyes flashed with irritation at her calm response. "Don't lecture me about schedules. I didn't build a $20 billion empire by accepting mediocrity from people who clearly couldn't succeed in competitive industries." What Alexander didn't know was that Catherine Rodriguez held a medical degree from Harvard, had completed advanced training in cardiac surgery, and was working as a nurse by choice while conducting revolutionary research that would save countless lives. More importantly, the hospital's state-of-the-art security system was recording every word of his intimidation attempt that would soon destroy his empire and expose his true character to the world. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The Platinum VIP suite at Manhattan General Hospital represented the absolute pinnacle of luxury medical care, occupying the entire 53rd floor of the prestigious medical center, with amenities that exceeded most presidential suites worldwide. The 5,000-square-foot space featured Italian marble floors imported from Carrara quarries at enormous expense, crystal chandeliers handcrafted by master artisans in Austria, panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Central Park and the Hudson River, private chef facilities staffed by culinary professionals trained at the world's most exclusive restaurants, conference rooms equipped with military-grade secure communication systems, and accommodations that catered exclusively to heads of state, entertainment royalty, and business magnates who demanded absolute control over their medical experience and surrounding environment. Alexander Hartwell had reserved the exclusive suite for what he claimed was routine cardiac monitoring, following chest discomfort during a high-stress acquisition meeting, though hospital administrators suspected his extended stay was motivated primarily by the luxury accommodations and business convenience, rather than genuine medical necessity or concern for his health. At 47 years old, Alexander controlled a real estate and financial services empire worth over $20 billion, with companies spanning commercial development, luxury residential projects, international banking, and private equity investments that employed over 200,000 people across 5 continents, while generating enormous profits through aggressive business practices that prioritized wealth accumulation over social responsibility or employee welfare. The suite itself had been designed by the same architectural firm responsible for creating luxury residences for European royalty, Silicon Valley tech moguls, and Middle Eastern oil magnates who demanded perfection in every detail of their living environments. Every surface, fixture, and amenity had been meticulously selected to communicate unlimited wealth, sophisticated taste, and absolute authority over the modern business world that Alexander believed he was helping to shape and control through his various ventures and investment strategies. The main living area featured Persian rugs, worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. Furniture handcrafted by master artisans in Italy and France, using techniques passed down through generations. Original artwork including pieces from Picasso's private collection, sculptures by contemporary masters, worth tens of millions of dollars each, and technology systems that provided secure access to global financial markets, classified government communications, and private networks used exclusively by the world's most powerful business leaders and political figures. Alexander's daily routine in the hospital suite resembled the command center of a multinational corporation more than a medical facility designed for patient care and recovery. His entourage included 10 personal assistants who managed different aspects of his global business empire, 15 security professionals who monitored both digital threats and physical safety concerns, 6 legal advisors who provided real-time consultation on complex international regulations and litigation strategies, 4 personal physicians recruited from exclusive private practices, and 2 communications directors who managed his public image across multiple social media platforms and traditional media outlets worldwide. The technology infrastructure rivaled that of government agencies and major corporations, featuring quantum-encrypted communication systems that prevented corporate espionage and unauthorized access, artificial intelligence platforms that analyzed market trends and competitive intelligence, in real-time satellite links to his corporate headquarters in New York, London, Tokyo, Dubai, Singapore, and Sydney, and computational resources that could process more financial data per second than most university research centers possessed or could afford to maintain for their academic and research programs. But beneath the veneer of technological sophistication and luxury accommodation, Alexander had created an environment where he systematically intimidated, belittled, and dominated anyone he perceived as intellectually inferior or professionally irrelevant to his business objectives and personal vision for global economic transformation through aggressive capitalism and market manipulation. His treatment of hospital staff, medical professionals, and support workers reflected a worldview that divided humanity into rigid categories of financial utility and intellectual capability, with most people classified as expendable resources whose needs, dignity, and welfare were completely irrelevant compared to profit maximization and wealth accumulation for the small elite that controlled international capital markets and global economic policy. Catherine Rodriguez represented everything that challenged Alexander's assumptions about professional hierarchy, intellectual capability, and the relationship between job titles and actual qualifications, though Alexander had never bothered to learn anything about the nurse who had been assigned to his care following multiple complaints about previous medical staff members who apparently lacked the subservience and accommodation that he expected from service providers and healthcare workers. At 36 years old, Catherine possessed educational credentials and professional experience that would have impressed even someone as arrogant and demanding as Alexander Hartwell, though her current position as a registered nurse at Manhattan General Hospital concealed a background that included some of the most prestigious medical training institutions in the United States and groundbreaking research that was advancing cardiac surgery and emergency medicine protocols worldwide. Catherine's educational journey had begun with undergraduate studies at Stanford University, where she had graduated summa cum laude with degrees in biomedical engineering and molecular biology, while conducting research that contributed to breakthrough developments in artificial heart technology and cardiac tissue regeneration that were revolutionizing treatment options for patients with end-stage heart disease and congenital cardiac abnormalities. Her academic excellence and research capabilities had earned her acceptance to Harvard Medical School, one of the most competitive and prestigious medical programs in the world, where she had completed her medical degree with highest honors while specializing in cardiovascular surgery and developing innovative surgical techniques that reduced mortality rates and improved recovery times for patients with complex cardiac conditions. The Harvard experience had included rotations at some of the country's most demanding medical centers, including Massachusetts General Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital, and Boston Children's Hospital, where Catherine had gained experience performing the most challenging cardiac procedures while working alongside world-renowned surgeons who considered her among the most talented medical professionals they had encountered during their careers in academic medicine and clinical practice. Her residency training in cardiovascular surgery had been completed at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, one of the most prestigious and competitive surgical programs in the United States, where she had worked with patients requiring heart transplants, complex congenital repairs, and emergency cardiac interventions that demanded split-second decision-making and flawless technical execution under extreme pressure and life-threatening circumstances. During her surgical training, Catherine had demonstrated exceptional clinical judgment, innovative problem-solving abilities, and leadership qualities that earned recognition from attending physicians and peers who considered her destined for academic medicine and research positions at the most prestigious medical institutions in the country and internationally. But Catherine's decision to work as a registered nurse, rather than practicing as a cardiovascular surgeon, reflected personal values and research interests that prioritized direct patient care and clinical innovation over the administrative responsibilities and lifestyle demands that characterized modern surgical practice in prestigious academic medical centers and private practice settings. Her choice to work as a nurse while maintaining her surgical credentials and medical expertise represented a deliberate strategy for conducting research about patient care delivery, nursing education, and the integration of advanced medical knowledge into bedside nursing practice that could improve outcomes for patients throughout the healthcare system, while advancing the nursing profession's clinical capabilities and professional recognition. Catherine's research interests focused on developing protocols that would allow nurses with advanced medical training to provide higher levels of care during cardiac emergencies, potentially saving lives in situations where immediate surgical intervention was required, but surgeon availability was limited by staffing constraints, geographic isolation, or mass casualty incidents that overwhelmed traditional medical response capabilities and emergency services. Her work at Manhattan General Hospital provided access to diverse patient populations and complex cardiac cases while allowing her to observe healthcare delivery systems from the perspective of nursing staff who provided the majority of direct patient care, but often lacked recognition for their clinical expertise and contributions to patient outcomes and safety. The research that Catherine conducted during her nursing shifts involved developing and testing protocols for nurse-led cardiac interventions, advanced assessment techniques that could identify life-threatening arrhythmias and cardiac events before they became fatal, and communication strategies that improved coordination between nursing staff and physicians during complex medical emergencies and critical care situations. Her dual qualification as both cardiovascular surgeon and registered nurse provided unique insights into healthcare delivery that informed research publications in prestigious medical journals and presentations at national conferences where her work was recognized as innovative contributions to cardiac care, emergency medicine, and nursing education that could transform how cardiac patients received care in various healthcare settings. But Catherine's most significant research involved developing training programs that could prepare nurses to function as cardiac care specialists during medical emergencies, potentially revolutionizing cardiac care delivery in hospitals, rural clinics, and emergency response situations where traditional medical staffing models were inadequate for patient needs and could result in preventable deaths from cardiac events. The work required maintaining her nursing position to collect data about real-world healthcare delivery while preserving her surgical credentials through continuing education and occasional procedures in cardiac surgery departments where she could apply her advanced training to the most critical and complex cases that required her expertise and innovative surgical techniques. Alexander Hartwell's admission to Manhattan General Hospital had created significant challenges for nursing staff who found his demanding personality, unreasonable expectations, and intimidating behavior toward healthcare workers difficult to manage while maintaining professional standards and providing quality patient care that met medical requirements and hospital protocols. His complaints about previous nurses had included criticism of their intelligence, education, response time to his demands, and apparent lack of appreciation for his importance as a business leader and philanthropist whose innovations and investments had transformed modern life for billions of people worldwide, while creating enormous wealth and economic opportunities. The nursing supervisor had assigned Catherine to Alexander's care based on her reputation for maintaining professional composure with difficult patients while providing excellent clinical care that met the highest medical standards regardless of patient behavior, unreasonable demands, or attempts to manipulate healthcare workers through intimidation and financial influence. Dr. Patricia Martinez, Manhattan General's chief medical officer, had briefed Catherine about Alexander's personality and expectations while emphasizing the importance of providing professional nursing care without compromising medical standards or accepting inappropriate behavior that violated professional boundaries, hospital policies, or basic standards of human decency and respect. Catherine, this patient has been extremely challenging for our entire nursing staff. Dr. Martinez had explained during their private discussion about Alexander's care requirements and behavioral patterns. He seems to view healthcare workers as personal assistants rather than medical professionals, and his demands often go beyond reasonable patient care into personal service that's completely inappropriate for hospital staff and medical professionals. Dr. Martinez had also warned Catherine about Alexander's tendency to test hospital staff through intimidation tactics and confrontational behavior that appeared designed to establish dominance over people he considered intellectually or socially inferior to technology entrepreneurs, financial leaders, and business moguls who controlled global markets and international economic policy. He's been particularly aggressive toward nursing staff, apparently believing that nurses lack the education or intelligence necessary to understand complex medical situations or contribute meaningfully to patient care beyond basic comfort measures and routine tasks. Dr. Martinez had continued, while reviewing Alexander's medical records and behavioral incidents with previous healthcare providers. The warning had prepared Catherine for difficult interactions, while confirming her research hypothesis that wealthy patients often underestimated nursing capabilities and education based on stereotypes about healthcare hierarchy and professional qualifications that didn't reflect the reality of modern nursing education, clinical expertise, and the advanced training that many nurses possessed. Catherine understood that her interaction with Alexander would provide valuable research data about patient attitudes toward nursing staff, while testing her ability to maintain professional boundaries and clinical excellence despite challenging interpersonal dynamics and potential harassment from someone accustomed to controlling his environment through wealth, intimidation, and perceived intellectual superiority. When Catherine entered Alexander's VIP suite for her first shift, providing his nursing care, she was prepared for confrontational behavior while committed to documenting his attitudes and responses for her ongoing research about patient-provider relationships and the impact of socio-economic status on healthcare interactions and patient behavior. The suite's luxury amenities and technology infrastructure immediately demonstrated the enormous wealth disparity between Alexander's world and the everyday reality of most hospital patients who received excellent medical care without private chefs, personal assistants, or accommodation that cost more per night than most people earned in months of full-time employment. Alexander was conducting a video conference with potential investors in his latest real estate development project, a luxury resort and casino complex worth several $billion that promised to generate enormous returns for early investors while transforming an entire region's economy through tourism, entertainment, and high-end residential development that would attract wealthy international clientele. The business meeting involved participants from sovereign wealth funds, pension systems, and family offices that managed over $3 trillion in combined assets and were evaluating opportunities to invest in Alexander's development projects that had historically generated substantial profits for investors, while sometimes displacing local communities and altering regional economic patterns. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're proposing represents the future of luxury hospitality and entertainment that will redefine tourism standards while creating unprecedented returns for our investment partners, Alexander was explaining to his international audience while reviewing architectural plans and financial projections on multiple high-definition screens that displayed complex development timelines and market analysis. The presentation required Alexander's complete attention to design details, regulatory approvals, and investment terms that could determine whether his companies secured the capital necessary for project completion while maintaining his reputation for delivering profitable developments that exceeded investor expectations and financial projections. When Catherine quietly entered the suite, carrying medication and monitoring equipment for Alexander's cardiac care, he barely acknowledged her presence, viewing the nurse as an interruption to important business discussions that would determine the future direction of his real estate empire and his position in highly competitive international development markets. "About time you showed up," Alexander said without looking away from his screens or pausing his presentation to international investors who were listening to his interaction with hospital staff through their video conference connection. "I've been waiting 15 minutes for my pain medication. In my world, delays like that cost millions of dollars and get people fired immediately for incompetence and unprofessionalism." The comment was designed to establish Catherine's subordinate status while demonstrating his business efficiency and demanding standards to investors who were evaluating his leadership capabilities and attention to detail that would affect their confidence in his ability to execute complex development projects and generate expected returns on their substantial investments. Catherine approached Alexander's bed with professional composure, recognizing that his criticism was based on incorrect assumptions about medication timing, while providing her with immediate data about his attitude toward healthcare workers and his need to perform dominance for his business audience. "Mr. Hartwell, your medication is right on schedule according to your prescribed treatment plan," Catherine replied calmly, while preparing to administer his cardiac medication according to proper medical protocols and safety procedures established by hospital policies and medical best practices. Her response was factual and professional, addressing Alexander's complaint while demonstrating her knowledge of his treatment schedule and commitment to providing excellent patient care despite his inappropriate criticism and public attempt to intimidate her in front of his business associates and potential investors. But Alexander interpreted Catherine's professional response as insubordination that needed to be countered with increased demonstration of his authority and business success, particularly in front of investors who were evaluating his leadership qualities and decision-making capabilities that would affect their confidence in his development projects and business management. "Don't lecture me about schedules when you clearly don't understand the complexity of managing global business operations," Alexander replied, with obvious irritation, while his international audience observed his treatment of hospital staff through their video conference connection. "I didn't build a $20 billion empire by accepting mediocrity from people who clearly couldn't succeed in competitive industries like real estate development and international finance." The insult was explicit and designed to humiliate Catherine while establishing his perceived intellectual and professional superiority for business associates who were witnessing his attitude toward service workers and healthcare providers who served his exclusive medical facility. What Alexander didn't realize was that his intimidating behavior toward Catherine Rodriguez was being recorded in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio by Manhattan General Hospital's comprehensive security system that documented all patient interactions for quality assurance, legal protection, and staff safety purposes that had been implemented following previous incidents involving patient harassment and inappropriate behavior. The security recordings were monitored in real time by trained personnel who were responsible for identifying inappropriate patient behavior, potential harassment of staff members, and situations that might require immediate intervention to protect healthcare workers from verbal abuse, threats, or other inappropriate conduct that violated hospital policies and professional standards. Marcus Thompson, the hospital's head of security, had been specifically instructed to monitor interactions between VIP patients and staff members following previous incidents involving wealthy patients who had attempted to use their financial influence to manipulate or intimidate healthcare workers who couldn't afford to resist or report inappropriate behavior without risking their employment and professional reputation. But what neither Marcus nor anyone else at Manhattan General Hospital expected was that Alexander's intimidating behavior toward Catherine would soon trigger revelations that would expose his ignorance about her qualifications while creating viral footage that would destroy his carefully constructed public image and business reputation among investors, clients, and business partners worldwide. As Alexander continued his video conference with international investors, his treatment of Catherine escalated from dismissive comments to explicit intimidation tactics designed to demonstrate his power and authority while using her as an example of the service industry incompetence that his business success had elevated him above through intelligence, determination, and strategic thinking. As you can see from this interruption, gentlemen, this is exactly why automation and artificial intelligence will eventually replace most service industry workers, Alexander told his business associates, while Catherine professionally administered his cardiac medication, despite his continued harassment and intimidation attempts. These people lack the analytical capabilities and strategic thinking necessary for complex problem-solving in competitive business environments that require innovation and adaptability. His commentary was designed to transform Catherine's presence into a business demonstration for his real estate and investment discussions, using the nurse as an example of human inadequacy that justified his company's investments in technology systems and automated services that could eliminate the need for human employees in various service sectors. The international investors participating in the video conference represented some of the world's most powerful financial institutions and sovereign wealth funds, creating an audience for Alexander's display of contempt toward healthcare workers and his vision for replacing human employment with technological solutions that would reduce labor costs while increasing profitability and operational efficiency. Alexander, that's an interesting perspective on workforce optimization that could enhance operational margins for our hospitality and entertainment investments, commented Dr. Sarah Kim from the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund that managed over $600 billion in international assets and development projects. Eliminating variable human factors from service delivery could create significant value propositions for our institutional investment strategies. The encouragement from his investors emboldened Alexander to escalate his commentary about Catherine and healthcare workers in general, creating increasingly explicit statements about his plans to revolutionize service industries through technological automation and artificial intelligence systems that would provide more reliable and cost-effective customer service. The economic inefficiencies created by traditional service industry employment are staggering when you analyze the data objectively, Alexander continued, while Catherine professionally monitored his vital signs and cardiac rhythms despite his ongoing harassment and intimidation tactics. These workers require constant supervision, extensive training, and they create liability issues through their inability to maintain consistent service standards that meet modern customer expectations. Catherine could hear Alexander's derogatory commentary, but chose to focus on providing excellent patient care while documenting his behavior and attitudes for her research about wealthy patients' perceptions of healthcare professionals and their understanding of medical education and clinical expertise requirements. Her clinical assessment revealed that Alexander's cardiac rhythms were normal, his blood pressure readings were within acceptable ranges, and his overall medical condition was stable, indicating that his hospitalization was indeed motivated more by luxury accommodation and business convenience than serious health concerns or medical necessity. But Catherine's medical training also allowed her to recognize signs of elevated stress hormones, anxiety responses, and psychological pressure that suggested Alexander's aggressive behavior toward healthcare workers might reflect underlying issues related to control, authority, and fear of vulnerability that wealthy patients often experienced in medical settings where their money couldn't guarantee outcomes or eliminate uncertainty. As Catherine completed her nursing assessment and medication administration, Alexander's demands became more explicit and designed to force her into acknowledgement of his perceived intellectual and financial superiority over healthcare workers who served wealthy patients in luxury medical facilities. "Nurse, I want you to explain to my business associates why nursing school graduates take so much longer to complete routine medical tasks compared to the automated systems my companies are developing for healthcare applications," Alexander commanded, while positioning Catherine in front of his video conference cameras, where international investors could observe her response to his challenging question and intimidating behavior. The demand was designed to force Catherine into a degrading educational performance while demonstrating his authority over healthcare workers to business associates who were evaluating his leadership capabilities and vision for technology-driven transformation of traditional service industries, including healthcare delivery. But Alexander's challenge had inadvertently created exactly the opportunity that Catherine needed to reveal his ignorance about her qualifications while exposing his arrogant assumptions about nursing education and medical expertise to his international business audience who controlled billions in investment capital. Catherine recognized that the moment had arrived to protect other healthcare workers from similar abuse, while providing her research with comprehensive documentation of how wealthy patients responded when their assumptions about medical professionals were proven completely incorrect and based on prejudice rather than factual assessment. "Mr. Hartwell, I'd be happy to discuss the complexity of modern healthcare delivery and nursing education," Catherine replied calmly, while her hidden recording devices captured Alexander's initial confidence as he prepared to witness what he assumed would be an embarrassing demonstration of intellectual inadequacy. Nursing practice today requires extensive understanding of pathophysiology, pharmacology, advanced assessment techniques, critical thinking skills, and clinical decision-making capabilities that enable nurses to identify life-threatening conditions and initiate appropriate interventions before they become medical emergencies, Catherine continued, while Alexander's business associates listened with growing interest to her sophisticated medical knowledge and professional expertise. Her response immediately demonstrated exactly the kind of intellectual capability and clinical expertise that Alexander had claimed nursing professionals lacked, creating immediate tension as his investors recognized the contradiction between his assertions about healthcare workers and Catherine's obvious competence and advanced knowledge. For example, Catherine continued while maintaining eye contact with Alexander's video conference cameras, your current cardiac monitoring protocol requires continuous assessment of rhythm abnormalities, medication interactions, and physiological responses that could indicate developing complications, requiring immediate physician consultation or emergency cardiac interventions. The detailed medical explanation revealed Catherine's advanced knowledge of cardiology, pharmacology, and emergency medicine that exceeded the basic nursing competence that Alexander had assumed represented the limits of her education and professional capabilities, creating obvious discomfort as he realized his assumptions might be incorrect. Alexander began to understand that Catherine's response was undermining his presentation to investors by demonstrating that his characterizations of healthcare worker capabilities were inaccurate, potentially affecting their confidence in his ability to analyze complex systems and identify appropriate targets for technological automation and business development. That's standard textbook knowledge that any nurse would memorize during training, Alexander interrupted, while attempting to regain control of the interaction and minimize Catherine's demonstration of expertise. Real innovation requires strategic thinking and complex problem-solving that goes beyond following predetermined protocols and established procedures. But Catherine's medical education and research experience had prepared her for exactly this type of dismissive response, and her next revelation would demonstrate intellectual capabilities and achievements that Alexander could not match despite his wealth and business success. "You're absolutely correct about the importance of innovation and strategic problem-solving," Catherine agreed, while beginning to reveal her true qualifications and research achievements. "That's why I've been conducting research about integrating advanced cardiac surgical techniques into emergency nursing protocols to improve patient outcomes during life-threatening cardiac events." The mention of cardiac surgical research immediately caught the attention of Alexander's international investors, who recognized that Catherine's language and technical knowledge suggested advanced medical education and research capabilities that far exceeded typical nursing training and clinical experience. "My research focuses on developing protocols that allow nurses with surgical training to perform emergency cardiac interventions when immediate surgical availability is limited by staffing constraints or geographic isolation," Catherine continued, while Alexander's business associates began to realize that their host had been systematically underestimating the healthcare professional who was providing his medical care. The revelation about surgical training created immediate shock among the video conference participants, who understood that Catherine was describing research that required advanced medical education and clinical expertise that contradicted Alexander's characterization of healthcare workers as intellectually limited service providers. "Wait, what exactly is your educational background?" asked James Rodriguez from the Mexican Sovereign Wealth Fund, his voice carrying obvious surprise at the disconnect between Catherine's qualifications and Alexander's treatment of her as an intellectually inferior service worker. Catherine recognized that the moment had arrived to complete her revelation, while providing her research with comprehensive documentation of how wealthy patients responded when their assumptions about healthcare workers were exposed as completely wrong and potentially harmful to their business relationships and professional credibility. "I hold a medical degree from Harvard Medical School with specialty training in cardiovascular surgery, and I completed my surgical residency at Johns Hopkins Hospital," Catherine announced calmly, while Alexander's face turned pale as he realized the magnitude of his mistake and public humiliation. "I'm currently working as a nurse while conducting research about patient care delivery and the systematic ways that wealthy patients' assumptions affect their treatment of healthcare professionals," Catherine continued, while Alexander's international business associates processed the shocking revelation that he had been insulting and intimidating someone whose medical credentials and achievements far exceeded his own accomplishments. The silence that followed Catherine's disclosure was deafening, as Alexander's investors realized that he had been publicly humiliating a Harvard-trained cardiovascular surgeon while demonstrating exactly the kind of poor judgment and character flaws that made him unsuitable for managing their institutional investments and representing their interests in complex business relationships. The video conference participants immediately understood that Catherine's medical credentials and research work gave her enormous credibility and influence that could affect their business relationships and investment decisions if Alexander's behavior created reputational damage or regulatory scrutiny that threatened their institutional interests. Additionally, Catherine continued while Alexander struggled to comprehend the implications of his behavior. This entire interaction has been recorded as part of my research about toxic patient behavior and its impact on healthcare delivery, with particular focus on how wealth and perceived social status affect treatment of medical professionals. The revelation about recording created additional shock as Alexander understood that his intimidating behavior and insulting comments about healthcare workers had been preserved as evidence of his character and judgment that could destroy his business reputation and investor relationships if the footage became public. Within hours of Catherine's revelation during Alexander's video conference, the recorded footage of his intimidating behavior toward a Harvard-trained cardiovascular surgeon began spreading across social media platforms with unprecedented velocity as healthcare workers throughout the United States shared their outrage about his treatment of medical professionals and his ignorant assumptions about nursing education and clinical expertise. The hashtag Dasheen Hartwell Exposed began trending nationally within 4 hours of the initial leak, as nurses, physicians, and healthcare administrators used Alexander's documented behavior to highlight broader issues about respect for medical professionals and the systematic undervaluation of healthcare workers by wealthy patients who assumed their money entitled them to abuse and intimidate clinical staff. The high-definition hospital security recordings captured every detail of Alexander's escalating intimidation, from his initial dismissive comments about healthcare workers to his explicit statements about replacing nurses with automated systems, his demand for degrading educational performance, and his shocked reaction when Catherine revealed her medical degree and surgical credentials that far exceeded his own achievements. The footage also captured the video conference with international investors who witnessed Alexander's behavior, creating additional evidence of his poor judgment and character flaws while exposing the business relationships and investment strategies that his intimidation and arrogance had jeopardized through public humiliation and reputational damage. Real estate and financial industry media coverage focused immediately on the implications for Alexander's business reputation and investor confidence, as his documented behavior contradicted his public image as a sophisticated business leader while demonstrating judgment problems and character issues that created risks for business relationships and financial partnerships. Real estate mogul humiliated after intimidating Harvard-trained surgeon working as nurse became headline news across major media platforms, with the security footage providing undeniable evidence of Alexander's arrogance and his fundamental ignorance about the medical professionals who were providing his healthcare in luxury accommodations. The video evidence showed Alexander's systematic intimidation of Catherine, his attempts to use her as an example of service industry incompetence for his business associates, his explicit plans to replace healthcare workers with artificial intelligence, and his complete shock when confronted with her actual qualifications and research credentials that exposed his assumptions as completely incorrect. Business media analysis highlighted the contradiction between Alexander's claims about analytical intelligence and strategic thinking and his obvious failure to research or understand the qualifications of the medical professional providing his care, raising questions about his judgment and attention to detail that affected investor confidence in his leadership capabilities and decision-making processes. The healthcare industry immediately rallied around Catherine's research and her dignified response to Alexander's intimidation, with major medical organizations issuing statements that highlighted the advanced education and clinical expertise that modern nursing practice required, while condemning wealthy patients who abused healthcare workers based on ignorant stereotypes. Healthcare professional organizations used Alexander's case to advocate for greater recognition of nursing education and clinical expertise, with the American Nurses Association issuing statements that highlighted the complex medical knowledge and critical thinking skills that registered nurses possessed, while calling for stronger protections against patient harassment and intimidation. Alexander Hartwell's behavior represents the systematic undervaluation and abuse that healthcare workers face from wealthy patients who don't understand the complexity and importance of modern nursing education and clinical practice, said American Nurses Association spokesperson Dr. Maria Santos. His intimidation tactics and ignorant assumptions were not only wrong, but dangerous to healthcare delivery and professional dignity. Medical education institutions, particularly Harvard Medical School and Johns Hopkins Hospital, issued statements supporting Catherine's research while condemning Alexander's treatment of a physician who had chosen to work as a nurse to advance medical knowledge and improve patient care delivery through innovative research and clinical protocols. Dr. Rodriguez's decision to work as a nurse while conducting important research about healthcare delivery represents exactly the kind of innovation and dedication that advances medical science and patient care, said Harvard Medical School spokesman Dr. Robert Chen. Mr. Hartwell's intimidation and abuse of her demonstrates ignorance about medical education and complete disrespect for healthcare professionals. The investor community responded swiftly to Alexander's documented behavior, with major real estate investment firms and institutional capital sources withdrawing funding commitments worth billions of dollars due to concerns about his judgment, character, and ability to maintain professional relationships with stakeholders and business partners who expected ethical leadership and respectful conduct. The Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund that had been participating in Alexander's video conference announced the immediate withdrawal of their $15 billion investment commitment, explaining that his treatment of healthcare professionals contradicted their institutional values and created reputational risks for their international investment portfolio. Mr. Hartwell's behavior toward Dr. Rodriguez demonstrated poor judgment and character flaws that make him unsuitable for managing institutional assets, explained Fund Director Dr. Sarah Kim. His intimidation tactics and ignorant assumptions about medical professionals raised serious concerns about his ability to understand complex systems and maintain appropriate relationships with stakeholders and business partners. Other international investors followed suit, recognizing that Alexander's documented intimidation and public humiliation created reputational damage that could affect their own business relationships and institutional credibility with stakeholders who expected ethical leadership and professional conduct from their investment managers and business partners. Stock prices for Alexander's publicly traded companies collapsed by 56% in the first week following the viral footage, as investors and customers recognized that his behavior created enormous reputational risks that could affect business relationships, regulatory compliance, and competitive positioning in real estate and financial services markets. Major corporate customers canceled development contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, citing concerns about associating their brands with Alexander's treatment of healthcare workers and his apparent disregard for professional expertise and human dignity that contradicted their own corporate values and social responsibility commitments. Healthcare systems throughout the United States announced policies prohibiting business relationships with Alexander's companies, recognizing that his documented disrespect for medical professionals made him unsuitable as a vendor or partner for organizations dedicated to healthcare excellence and professional dignity. The medical real estate implications were particularly damaging, as Alexander's companies had been developing luxury medical facilities and healthcare complexes, but his documented contempt for healthcare workers undermined confidence in his ability to create environments that would support medical professionals and quality patient care. Alexander's personal wealth suffered devastating losses as his real estate holdings lost value and his other investments faced scrutiny from partners and financial institutions that were concerned about continued association with someone whose behavior created legal and reputational risks that could affect their own business interests. His luxury property portfolio, art collections, and investment accounts faced potential liquidation as business relationships dissolved and legal challenges emerged from investors, employees, and business partners who claimed financial damages from his conduct and its impact on their financial interests and professional reputations. As media coverage of Alexander Hartwell's humiliation intensified, public attention shifted to Catherine Rodriguez's groundbreaking research about healthcare delivery and the systematic ways that wealthy patients' assumptions and intimidation tactics affected their treatment of medical professionals, creating unprecedented awareness about nursing education and the advanced clinical expertise that modern healthcare delivery required. Catherine's doctoral dissertation research, which had motivated her decision to work as a nurse, despite her surgical credentials and medical expertise, became the subject of academic conferences, healthcare policy discussions, and medical education reform initiatives that sought to address the professional respect and recognition gaps that her work had documented through systematic observation and analysis. The research methodology that Catherine had employed, working as a nurse while maintaining surgical credentials to study patient-provider relationships and healthcare delivery systems, was recognized as innovative social science that provided unique insights into healthcare interactions and the impact of socioeconomic factors on medical care quality and professional dignity. Her findings about wealthy patients' assumptions regarding nursing competence, their intimidation tactics and abusive behavior, and their systematic undervaluation of healthcare workers' education and expertise were published in prestigious medical journals and became required reading in nursing schools, medical education programs, and healthcare administration curricula worldwide. The data that Catherine had collected during her 18 months at Manhattan General Hospital revealed disturbing patterns of behavior among wealthy patients that contradicted their public statements about supporting healthcare workers while demonstrating systematic disrespect for medical professionals who didn't match their stereotypes about intelligence, education, and professional hierarchy. Wealthy patients consistently underestimated nursing capabilities while attempting to use intimidation and financial pressure to control healthcare interactions, Catherine explained during television interviews about her research findings and their implications for healthcare policy. They expected subservience rather than professional collaboration, and they often used healthcare workers as entertainment for business associates or demonstrations of their perceived social superiority. Her research had documented thousands of interactions between wealthy patients and healthcare workers, revealing systematic patterns of intimidation, inappropriate demands, and assumptions about intellectual capability that affected patient care quality while creating hostile working environments for medical professionals who deserved respect and professional recognition. The statistical analysis showed that wealthy patients were significantly more likely to challenge nursing assessments, make intimidating comments about healthcare workers' education and intelligence, demand inappropriate personal services, and attempt to establish dominance relationships that interfered with proper medical care delivery and professional healthcare standards. Catherine's work also revealed that healthcare institutions often enabled abusive behavior by prioritizing revenue from wealthy patients over staff protection and professional dignity, creating environments where medical professionals were expected to tolerate harassment and intimidation without institutional support or effective recourse against patient abuse. The hospital administration's response to her research had been complicated, with some administrators supporting her findings, while others were concerned about the implications for their relationships with wealthy patients who provided significant revenue through luxury medical services and philanthropic contributions that supported hospital operations and expansion projects. Dr. Patricia Martinez, Manhattan General's Chief Medical Officer, became a strong advocate for Catherine's research and its implications for healthcare policy and institutional practices that affected medical professional satisfaction, patient care quality, and healthcare delivery systems throughout the industry. Dr. Rodriguez's research provides crucial evidence about how socioeconomic factors affect healthcare delivery and patient-provider relationships, Dr. Martinez explained during medical conferences where Catherine presented her findings to healthcare administrators and policymakers. Her work demonstrates that we need systematic changes in how healthcare institutions balance revenue considerations with professional dignity and staff protection. The research findings influenced policy discussions at major medical organizations, including the American Medical Association, American Nurses Association, and Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations, leading to new standards for patient behavior expectations and staff protection policies that strengthened professional boundaries and accountability mechanisms. Healthcare institutions throughout the United States began implementing policies that addressed inappropriate patient behavior, established clear consequences for harassment or intimidation of medical professionals, and created support systems for healthcare workers who experienced discrimination or abuse from wealthy patients who attempted to use financial influence to manipulate medical care. The broader implications of Catherine's research extended beyond healthcare to include discussions about service industry worker protection, professional respect across socioeconomic boundaries, and the responsibility of wealthy individuals to treat service providers and professionals with dignity, regardless of perceived social status differences or economic power imbalances. Business schools began incorporating Catherine's findings into curricula about leadership ethics and stakeholder relationships, using her documentation of wealthy patients' behavior as examples of how privilege and wealth could corrupt judgment, while creating toxic relationships with service providers, employees, and professional staff members. The research also influenced technology development policies, particularly regarding artificial intelligence applications in healthcare, with Catherine's work providing evidence about the importance of maintaining human relationships and professional expertise in medical care delivery systems that required empathy, clinical judgment, and complex problem-solving capabilities. The complete collapse of Alexander Hartwell's business empire accelerated as additional evidence emerged about his treatment of employees, business partners, and service providers throughout his career, revealing systematic patterns of intimidation and disrespect that had been concealed by wealth and corporate power until his public humiliation exposed his true character to investors, regulators, and business associates worldwide. Federal investigators and congressional committees began examining Alexander's business practices and corporate culture, using Catherine's recorded evidence as a starting point for broader investigations into workplace harassment, intimidation tactics, and hostile working environments throughout his real estate companies and financial services operations that employed thousands of workers. The Department of Justice announced investigations into potential securities fraud related to Alexander's concealment of management problems and toxic corporate culture from institutional investors who deserved accurate information about leadership risks and character issues when making capital allocation decisions about his development projects and business ventures. Securities and Exchange Commission examinations expanded to include Alexander's public statements about healthcare technology investments and artificial intelligence capabilities, investigating whether his documented ignorance about healthcare delivery systems and medical professionals constituted fraudulent misrepresentation to investors and business partners who relied on his expertise claims. Congressional hearings about real estate industry accountability and healthcare technology regulation used Alexander's case as evidence of the need for enhanced oversight of business executives whose personal behavior and judgment problems could affect critical infrastructure and healthcare systems that served millions of Americans and international clients. Employment law investigations revealed systematic intimidation and harassment throughout Alexander's companies, with hundreds of employees coming forward to report similar treatment to what Catherine had documented, including inappropriate challenges to their competence, demands for degrading performance, and retaliation against workers who resisted or reported executive abuse and intimidation tactics. The civil litigation against Alexander personally and his corporate entities proceeded on multiple fronts, with employment attorneys representing not only current and former employees, but also business partners, customers, and investors who claimed financial damages from his conduct and its impact on corporate performance and business relationships. Class action lawsuits included claims for harassment, intimidation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and violations of employment protection laws that provided comprehensive legal accountability for Alexander's systematic abuse of authority and his company's failure to protect stakeholders from his misconduct. The real estate industry's response to Alexander's documented behavior was swift and comprehensive, with major development companies, professional organizations, and industry groups distancing themselves from his approach to business relationships and his treatment of healthcare workers, employees, and service providers who contributed to successful project development. Real estate conferences and professional organizations revoked Alexander's speaking invitations, awards, and membership privileges while implementing enhanced ethical standards and accountability measures for industry leaders whose behavior could affect public trust in real estate development and property management practices. The healthcare real estate development community used Alexander's case to advocate for enhanced ethical guidelines and oversight mechanisms that would ensure development projects served medical professional welfare and patient care quality rather than extracting profits without consideration for healthcare delivery requirements and professional working conditions. Healthcare technology development faced increased scrutiny as Catherine's research on Alexander's behavior highlighted the importance of maintaining collaboration between technology developers and medical professionals rather than replacing healthcare workers with automated systems developed by executives who lacked understanding of medical care complexity and patient safety requirements. The international real estate investment community distanced itself from Alexander's business practices and development strategies, recognizing that his documented intimidation and disrespect for professionals created reputational risks that could affect global business relationships and regulatory compliance in multiple jurisdictions where his companies had operated. The criminal prosecution for workplace harassment and securities fraud violations resulted in comprehensive plea negotiations that included significant prison time, financial penalties, and prohibition from business leadership activities that prevented Alexander from resuming his intimidation tactics and abusive management practices in any corporate or professional capacity. Federal prosecutor Jennifer Martinez recognized that Alexander's case represented an opportunity to establish important precedents for holding wealthy executives accountable for workplace harassment, while demonstrating that financial resources and social status would not protect individuals from consequences for criminal behavior against employees and professional staff. This case demonstrates everything that's wrong with corporate culture that tolerates intimidation and systematic harassment of employees and professionals, Prosecutor Martinez announced during the press conference outlining criminal charges. The defendant used his position and wealth to systematically intimidate and abuse healthcare professionals whose only offense was providing medical care while maintaining professional dignity and clinical excellence. The criminal charges included multiple counts of workplace harassment, creating hostile working environments, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to violate civil rights that carried potential prison sentences totaling up to 15 years if Alexander was convicted on all counts, related to his systematic abuse of authority. The prosecution's case was significantly strengthened by Catherine's comprehensive documentation, which captured not only Alexander's intimidating behavior, but also his escalating threats and explicit attempts to force degrading performance that demonstrated criminal intent rather than poor management judgment or personality conflicts. Alexander's defense team, led by prominent white-collar criminal attorney Michael Pierce, attempted to argue that his behavior constituted inappropriate management techniques rather than criminal conduct. But the video evidence made such defenses extremely difficult to sustain, given the explicit nature of his harassment and intimidation tactics. Our client acknowledges that his communication style was demanding and sometimes insensitive, Pierce explained during preliminary hearings. But criminal charges are excessive for what amounts to workplace disputes about professional expectations and service standards in high-pressure business environments that require efficiency and results. But Prosecutor Martinez countered that the video evidence showed systematic harassment that went far beyond demanding management to include explicit intimidation, threatening behavior, and creation of hostile working environments that violated clear criminal statutes designed to protect employees and professionals from exactly this type of executive abuse. The trial proceedings attracted national media attention, as Catherine's case highlighted broader issues about corporate accountability, employee protection, and the responsibility of executives to maintain professional standards regardless of their wealth, position, or stress levels. From business pressures and competitive market conditions, Catherine's testimony was particularly powerful, as she described not only Alexander's specific intimidation tactics, but also the systematic nature of toxic corporate culture that affected thousands of healthcare workers and other professionals who lacked the education, resources, or job security necessary to resist or report executive abuse without facing retaliation. Mr. Hartwell's behavior wasn't just about personal cruelty or individual character flaws, Catherine testified during the criminal trial. It reflected a corporate culture that treated employees and professionals as disposable resources rather than human beings deserving of dignity and respect. His actions demonstrated leadership philosophy that prioritized executive comfort and ego satisfaction over worker welfare and professional collaboration. The prosecution also called expert witnesses on workplace harassment and corporate culture, who testified about the psychological impact of Alexander's behavior and the systematic nature of executive intimidation in corporations where accountability mechanisms failed to protect vulnerable employees and professional staff from wealthy executives who abused their authority. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychologist specializing in workplace trauma and organizational behavior, explained how Alexander's intimidation tactics created lasting psychological harm while perpetuating corporate cultures that enabled systematic abuse of employees and professionals who couldn't afford to resist or seek alternative employment opportunities. The defendant's conduct represents a textbook example of how wealthy executives abuse power relationships to systematically dehumanize employees and professionals, Dr. Williams testified. His intimidation tactics created trauma that extends beyond individual victims to affect entire workforces that understand they could face similar treatment if they challenge executive authority or maintain professional dignity. The defense team's attempts to minimize Alexander's behavior were undermined by additional evidence that emerged during the investigation, including testimony from dozens of other employees and professionals who had experienced similar intimidation and documentation of corporate policies that enabled or concealed executive misconduct and harassment. The jury deliberation lasted only 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all criminal charges, with jurors explaining afterward that Catherine's video evidence and witness testimony provided overwhelming proof of Alexander's criminal behavior and systematic abuse of corporate authority and professional relationships. The evidence was clear and disturbing, explained jury foreman David Martinez after the verdict was announced. Mr. Hartwell's behavior showed complete disregard for employee rights and professional dignity, and his position as CEO made his conduct even more egregious because of the power imbalance and systematic nature of his intimidation and harassment. The criminal conviction carried a sentence of 6 years in federal prison, 8 years of probation, mandatory participation in workplace harassment counseling and anger management programs, and community service requirements that included working with organizations protecting employee rights and professional dignity in healthcare and other service industries. 5 years after the incident that destroyed Alexander Hartwell's career and exposed systematic problems in healthcare delivery and corporate culture, Catherine Rodriguez had transformed her research findings into comprehensive policy changes that strengthened protection for healthcare workers while advancing nursing education and professional recognition throughout the United States and internationally. The Catherine Rodriguez Healthcare Professional Protection Act, enacted in 47 states, created legal frameworks that protected medical professionals from patient harassment and intimidation while establishing clear consequences for wealthy patients whose behavior violated professional dignity and created hostile working environments in healthcare facilities. Healthcare institutions throughout the country implemented comprehensive policies based on Catherine's research findings, including patient behavior standards, staff protection protocols, and training programs that educated wealthy patients about appropriate conduct and professional respect for medical providers and healthcare support staff. The nursing profession achieved enhanced recognition and professional respect, partly due to the publicity generated by Catherine's case and research, with increased funding for nursing education, expanded research opportunities for nurse scientists, and public awareness about the advanced training and clinical expertise required for modern nursing practice in complex medical environments. Catherine's academic career flourished as she accepted the position of Director of Healthcare Ethics Research at Harvard Medical School, where she developed curricular and training programs that taught current and future medical professionals about patient-provider relationships, healthcare ethics, and the importance of professional respect that prepared them for managing difficult interpersonal dynamics while maintaining care quality. Her memoir, Behind the Bedside: How Research Exposed Healthcare Hierarchy and Transformed Patient Care, became required reading in medical and nursing schools, while inspiring healthcare workers to advocate for professional recognition and protection from patient abuse and institutional discrimination that had historically been tolerated or ignored. The book's international success led to speaking opportunities worldwide, where Catherine shared insights about healthcare delivery, professional relationships, and research methodologies that could expose systematic problems while creating accountability for misconduct and discrimination in medical settings and other professional environments. Medical education programs adopted Catherine's dual physician-nurse model as an innovative approach to understanding healthcare delivery from multiple professional perspectives, with several institutions creating formal programs that allowed medical graduates to work in various healthcare roles while conducting research about care delivery systems and professional relationships. The technology industry adopted enhanced ethical guidelines for artificial intelligence development in healthcare, recognizing that replacing human professionals required comprehensive understanding of medical care complexity, patient safety requirements, and professional relationships rather than simplistic assumptions about automation possibilities and cost reduction opportunities. Alexander Hartwell's personal transformation during incarceration and community service included genuine recognition of the harm his intimidation tactics had caused and commitment to supporting organizations that protected healthcare workers and other professionals from harassment and executive abuse that he had previously perpetuated throughout his business career. His rehabilitation program included working directly with healthcare organizations, nursing education programs, and employee protection advocacy groups that exposed him to the perspectives and experiences of the people he had systematically intimidated and dismissed throughout his business career, while learning about their education, expertise, and contributions to society. The Alexander Hartwell Healthcare Worker Support Foundation was established with his remaining personal assets and ongoing contributions from his new career as a social worker specializing in workplace harassment recovery, providing resources for healthcare professionals who had experienced patient abuse and institutional discrimination. Catherine served as the Foundation's research director, using her position to expand the groundbreaking studies that had exposed Alexander's behavior while developing interventions and policies that improved healthcare working environments and professional recognition throughout the medical industry worldwide. 10 years after Catherine Rodriguez's exposure of Alexander Hartwell's intimidation tactics, their story continued to influence healthcare policy, business ethics education, and professional recognition standards throughout the United States and internationally, creating lasting protections for healthcare workers while establishing accountability mechanisms for wealthy patients and corporate executives. The transformation of healthcare institutional culture included comprehensive patient behavior policies that prioritized professional dignity and staff protection over revenue from wealthy patients who had historically been accommodated despite inappropriate conduct and harassment of medical professionals who deserved respect and professional recognition. Business schools and executive education programs incorporated Catherine's research and Alexander's case into mandatory curricula about leadership ethics, stakeholder relationships, and the importance of treating all employees and professionals with dignity, regardless of perceived social status, financial resources, or professional hierarchy within organizational structures. The healthcare industry achieved enhanced professional recognition for nursing expertise and advanced clinical capabilities, with policy changes that strengthened educational requirements, expanded scope of practice, and increased compensation for nurses whose contributions to patient care and medical outcomes had been systematically undervalued despite their advanced training and clinical expertise. International healthcare organizations adopted elements of Catherine's research framework for understanding patient-provider relationships and developing policies that protected medical professionals from harassment while ensuring quality patient care that balanced customer service with professional dignity and clinical excellence. The legal precedents established through Alexander's prosecution strengthened protections for healthcare workers and other professionals throughout American businesses, with enhanced employment protection laws that held both individual executives and corporate entities accountable for creating or tolerating hostile working environments that violated professional dignity and worker rights. Technology development in healthcare faced increased regulatory oversight that required meaningful collaboration between developers and medical professionals rather than replacement strategies that ignored the complexity of patient care and the importance of human relationships in healthcare delivery and medical decision-making processes. Catherine's research methodologies influenced similar studies by other medical professionals and researchers who recognized the need for systematic examination of healthcare delivery systems, professional relationships, and the impact of socioeconomic factors on medical care quality and patient outcomes across diverse healthcare settings. The comprehensive policy changes that resulted from their encounter included enhanced accountability for wealthy patients, stronger protections for healthcare workers, improved professional recognition for nursing expertise, and systematic reforms in how healthcare institutions balanced revenue considerations with staff welfare and professional dignity. Alexander's continued foundation work and advocacy demonstrated the possibility for genuine character transformation and positive contribution following accountability for harmful behavior, though his case remained a cautionary example about the dangers of wealth insulation and privilege that could corrupt judgment and enable systematic abuse of professional relationships. Most importantly, their story reinforced the fundamental truth that professional competence and human dignity existed independently of job titles, social status, or apparent position in institutional hierarchies, and that assumptions about intelligence and capabilities based on superficial characteristics were often completely wrong and potentially devastating for individuals who made such judgments. Catherine Rodriguez had proven that individual courage and innovative research could challenge systematic discrimination while creating positive changes that protected countless healthcare workers from similar abuse and promoted professional recognition that reflected the true complexity and importance of medical care delivery in modern healthcare systems. The lasting impact included not just legal protections and policy changes, but also cultural transformation that recognized the inherent dignity of all healthcare workers and the importance of maintaining respectful relationships between patients and providers, regardless of wealth, social status, or perceived hierarchy within medical institutions and healthcare delivery systems. Epilogue: the enduring transformation. The viral footage that captured Alexander Hartwell's intimidation attempt against Dr. Catherine Rodriguez became more than just a moment of individual accountability. It evolved into a catalyst for systematic change in healthcare professional recognition, patient behavior standards, and the protection of medical workers from harassment and intimidation by wealthy patients who had traditionally escaped consequences for inappropriate conduct. Catherine's groundbreaking research had exposed patterns of behavior that existed throughout the healthcare industry, where assumptions about nursing competence and professional hierarchy created environments that undervalued medical expertise, while enabling abuse from patients who confused luxury accommodation with permission to intimidate and harass healthcare providers who deserved professional respect. Alexander's transformation from intimidating mogul to healthcare worker advocate demonstrated that genuine character change was possible when individuals faced real consequences for their behavior and received education about the people they had dismissed based on superficial assumptions about intelligence, education, and professional worth. The comprehensive legal, policy, and cultural changes that resulted from their encounter created lasting protections for healthcare workers while establishing clear expectations for patient behavior that prioritized professional respect and dignity over customer accommodation and revenue generation from wealthy patients. Most significantly, their story reinforced the essential truth that expertise, dedication, and human worth existed in unexpected places, and that wealth or social status provided no reliable indication of character, intelligence, or the right to treat other people with disrespect, intimidation, or condescension. Catherine Rodriguez had demonstrated that one person's commitment to research and professional excellence could expose systematic problems while creating positive change that benefited entire communities of healthcare workers who faced similar challenges but lacked the protection or platform necessary to document and address workplace harassment and patient abuse. The high-definition exposure of Alexander's behavior had proven that private misconduct by powerful individuals could no longer remain hidden, and that accountability was both possible and necessary for protecting vulnerable professionals while maintaining standards that respected human dignity and professional expertise. Their legacy continued to inspire healthcare professionals, researchers, and advocates who recognized that protecting workplace dignity required vigilance, courage, and systematic commitment to treating all people with the respect and recognition they deserved as human beings and professional contributors to community health and welfare. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.